76ers barely had time to unpack their bags. Isaiah Joe and company back out on the road again. Tonight, Shake Milton and company, they are in Boston, Massachusetts. The only visit by the 76ers to Beantown this season to continue their longtime rivalry with the Celtics. Tobias Harris, one of the 76ers closers. Is that we might have to zoom in, a branded face mask? I might need confirmation, verification. It looks to me like it's TH on that face mask for the one and only Tobias. I'm on my bounty ball tour, Harris. As we welcome you into 7-6 Live Countdown presented by Tissot. Lauren Rosen, right off the bat, we need a ruling. Was that a TH face mask?
I can officially confirm to you that it was indeed a branded face mask. I think he debuted it in our maybe last game, but I've seen it, can confirm.
How about that? I like it. Why not? They've been around long enough. I think they probably should, not to get on a soapbox, be here to stay regardless of what you get in your arm or you don't. Get your own personal branded face mask. Why not? I might have to do it.
It'll help you make sure you don't get it mixed up with anybody else's face mask. It's important.
I would agree with that. Sixers tonight opening there. Yes, crystal clear, no doubt about it. I like it. Well done, Cletty and Trevor. Sharp look. I dig.
I'm all about it. No complaints.
All right, we have the start of another road trip for the 76ers, a 4-gamer this time. It begins at TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts. 76ers figure to be at full strength tonight. They're coming off a tough loss, Lauren, against the Memphis Grizzlies, 116-100 on Sunday. And I think it seems like they're very eager to put that performance in the past.
Yeah, I think they took accountability for the tough night. They said they just didn't have the juice, didn't bring the energy, and Memphis did. Sometimes that happens. Doc Rivers, just prior to our show, said that he feels like this might actually just be one big, long road trip. 20 days on the road out of 23. The 3 days they spent at home, they played 2 games, one being that loss against Memphis, one being a win over Minnesota, in which we saw Joel Embiid return to the floor. But yeah, Celtics, they took accountability for that loss. Doesn't seem like they're going to be repeating that type of history anytime soon if they can avoid it.
Even just to have yesterday as somewhat of a reset day, even though the 76ers were traveling, they had an 8 o'clock game on Saturday, an earlier start time on Sunday. That was essentially that back-to-back starting 48 hours after coming home from the long trip that went from New York to the West Coast to Cleveland and back again. So perhaps an opportunity for the Sixers to reset, come back tonight, take on a 500 Boston Celtics team that's in 7th place in the Eastern Conference. And I think, Lauren, tonight, obviously it's noteworthy because it's 76ers and Celtics, and we're talking about 2 playoff teams in the East. But really, when you look at the schedule, this is game number 51. There's 21 to go. If you were to chop it up into like the final quarter of the season, if you're the Sixers, you could look at this as the start of the real home stretch, the final push. And what a better way to get it going than against the Celtics.
Yeah, the opportunity to sweep the regular season series, which I know we're going to get to, but the Sixers already have 2 wins under their belt against this Boston Celtics team, which, as you mentioned, has struggled maybe a little bit more than we're accustomed to seeing Celtics teams struggle over the last few years, sitting right at 500. Here's some highlights from those first 2. Matisse Thybulle with his, trademark type pick 6, blocking the jump shot and taking it back to the other end. He now leads the league in blocked jump shots despite his lower than most league leaders minutes, let's say. But yeah, these 2 were awesome. And Celtics Joel Embiid was just unbelievable in both of these games.
Incredible. He combined for a total of 80 points in the 2 matchups with the Boston Celtics, a home and home at the center back on January 20th and 22nd, 2 76ers victories. He was a tough player to stop. Now, Boston did not have Jason Tatum available for either of those 2 games, so that's something that's different this time around. Tatum will be playing, but no Evan Fournier for the Celtics tonight. He's out due to health and safety protocols, as is Tristan Thompson. So 2 key members of Boston's rotation not available tonight. But I think one thing that we saw on the bottom of the screen, the 76ers road record of 14-11, and it's gotten better and better as the season has gone along. Sixers tied for the most road wins in the Eastern Conference. They've played a ton of road games, but I think that's a noteworthy trait that we've seen develop and grow for this team.
Absolutely. Good teams often aim to be 500 on the road. So to be sitting 3 games above 500 on the road, a really good sign for this Sixers team. And I'm sure these next four, with the fire that they brought out of Sunday's loss, could, I don't know, maybe help that record even more.
There's really not a whole lot to talk about of real merit from that game on Sunday. But before we move on to the show, and we have some great stuff coming up, Lauren speaking with Shake Milton, we're going to debut a new segment. I'm going to leave that tease right there in just a few moments for some of you X and O hardcore analytic hoop heads to get inside the matchup. New segment debuting tonight. We'll also hear from Ian Eagle, the announcer from TNT, who's calling tonight's game because the game is on TNT. But Paul Reed, Lauren, certainly a redeeming storyline from Sunday's game on an otherwise tough night. Love to see B-Ball Paul doing some good things.
Yep, I agree with you. Celts, a bright spot on a tough night. You see the stats at the bottom of your screen, 10 points, 5 of 7 from the field, his first double-figure performance, 6 rebounds and 2 assists. He brought a little bit of fire. He played early, he played late, and he was able to get it done. It's cool to see him start to get reps with the team, because when Doc Rivers is asked about him, he talks a lot about how Paul is on a bit of a different timeline than the rest of the players. He hasn't been playing in this system. He doesn't know the offense or the defense as well as the other players do. So to see him start to get into a rhythm, Celts, I thought was a pretty good sign for B-Ball Paul.
Right now, it seems like it's all about prioritizing getting Paul Reed reps when the 76ers can. Doc Rivers is not committing to whether or not he could be a starting small ball 5 if Joel Embiid's not playing, or really anything about the rotation. It's just finding sensible and logical moments in games and situations to get Paul Reed more minutes, more action at the NBA level. And after the game on Sunday, Paul Reed discussed his best performance as a 76er today.
I know where to go on defense. I know the rotation schemes. I think it's like 2 things. Just making sure I'm communicating loud, early, and often, and making sure that, I keep getting stronger every day, because, I'm playing against some big boys, so ain't nothing sweet down there.
I love it. Can't be sweet down there playing with the big boys. Paul Reed talking about what he needs to do as he moves along in his NBA career. Well, one guy who is entrenched in his NBA career, Shake Milton, certainly has given the 76ers great minutes so far. He is needed, especially on those nights when you could use a little punch from the bench, and he's in the midst of a pretty good stretch right now, Lauren.
Yeah, we know that he was a little up and down before the All-Star break, but since he got back, he's been looking really strong, pretty consistently leading the bench effort, and I got to catch up with him this morning. Jake, you guys just got back from a really long trip, and now you're starting another really long trip. How much mental toughness is a schedule like this requiring of you?
Yeah, it's a grind. I mean, games are one thing, but it's like you got to deal with the testing and all the other stuff that comes with it. That's the hardest part. But so yeah, it's important that you take your time and get your mental right, and we can come together as a team, focus, and try to get these W's.
Having Joel back on the road, back in the lineup, maybe independently of how many minutes you guys share on the court, how does having him with you and on the bench and available, how does that change the collective mentality that the team has?
Well, I mean, we always go out there to go get wins, but having Joe back is obviously a game changer. Everything that he brings, his leadership skills, all of that has been missed. So, like I said, we're just excited to have the whole team back and, go out there and get some W's.
Awesome. Thanks, Jake.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting to talk to Shake about mental toughness and then talk again to Doc Rivers just prior to our show about mental toughness. Doc said that in the bubble, there was a lot of mental toughness required, but that was maybe more about team building and camaraderie. He says the season that they're in currently with this road schedule, lack of off days, mental toughness has been really key for this team. And they're going to need it as they continue on what Doc considers an extended road trip.
I think that's a great way to look at it. And it's true. The 76ers certainly need a lot of mental fortitude to get through this stretch. Mentioned a few moments ago, Lauren, we have a new segment that we're going to sprinkle in sporadically here on 7-6 Live Countdown, presented by Tissot, as the season gets deeper and deeper and some of the games have higher and higher stakes For a few of these marquee matchups that are left on the schedule, we're going to go inside the game with Jason Crafton. Jason, a former assistant with the Delaware Bluecoats, and he's now currently the head coach at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. He was a part of the Bluecoats broadcasts during their Gubble run down in Orlando not too long ago. High energy guy, super knowledgeable about hoops. So here we have it, our debut inside the game with Jason Crafton looking at tonight's matchup.
This is Jason Crafton, and let's take some time to get in the game. Tonight, the Sixers have a big-time matchup versus the Boston Celtics. And when you're playing the Celtics, you know you got to come out and you got to stop Jason Tatum. One of the things that makes Jason Tatum such an elite player is his length and ability to score in transition. I mean, he's excellent. Getting hands on basketballs, getting out in the break, being able to finish at the rim with the mid-range and also the three-point shot. The Sixers are going to have to do a great job of maintaining ball pressure on him in their switches, keeping a radar arm and not allowing him to come off the screens and be able to shoot the three off the bounce like he loves to do. He's elite at that, and we got to do a great job of stopping that and slowing that down. The other thing is Kemba Walker, and he gets you in the mix. He can split ball screens. He can push that thing. He's drawing to and kicking. We got to constantly show a crowd versus Kemba Walker, keep him out of the lane, not allow him to feel like he can get some confidence and to get into his driving kick game. And then let's not forget about Jaylen Brown, all right? Between Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, those two guys are making the majority of the three-point shots for the Celtics. When the Celtics win games this year, they're shooting 42%. The rest of their stats are pretty much equal. When they're not winning games, they're shooting 32%. So a big key to this game is going to be eliminating the three ball. So you can't let Tatum get open. You can't let him get easy shots from three. You can't let Jaylen Brown get going from three. You got to keep Kemba Walker out of the paint so we can't set those guys up for three. If you're a true Sixers fan, you're definitely hoping that the big fella Joel Embiid makes his comeback tonight. Here's what's great about Joel, and if he can come back into the mix. For his career, he's 48% from the field. This season, he's 52% from the field and averaging 29.8 points a game to go with 11 rebounds. All right, he's also shooting 40% from three, which is a career high for him. Now, one of the things that Joel's doing such a great job of, he's bought into Doc Rivers, his system and his style of play. For years, coaches have been trying to get Joel to take less threes. So now he's taking better threes, and his percentages are on the rise. He's one of the most efficient players in the game of basketball right now and having the best season of his career. Hopefully the big fella makes a comeback because we know the Sixers versus Celtics is always a grinded out affair. Don't worry about the Celtics record because we know that's going to be a physical matchup. If the big fella can play tonight, advantage always goes to the Sixers.
Inside the game with Jason Crafton, former Bluecoats assistant coach, now the head coach at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore.
I dig it. I learned a thing or two on there, Celts. I really enjoyed that one. Glad we're doing it.
How about that stat that Jason dropped out there? 42% Celtics, great record when they shoot from three. If you keep them to under 35 or less, essentially, not so great Celtics. I thought that was a really quality stat for Jason to drop in there.
I like that one. More on that one when we get to our Tissot Keys to the Game segment.
Yes, don't want to spoil too much. Got to keep those keys concealed.
Keep it on lock.
I hear what you did there. I see it as well. Listen, we know NBC Sports Philadelphia, the best for local coverage of the 76ers. If you happen to be out of market, the game is on the NBA on TNT tonight. Reggie Miller and Ian Eagle are going to broadcast that. I had the chance to speak with the Birdman, Ian Eagle, about tonight's game a little while ago. Ian, we're heading into the heart of the home stretch of the season. 76ers, Celtics, two longtime rivals. What's at stake, do you think, when they meet for the third and final time tonight?
I think under normal circumstances, you would look at this and some of the ramifications that it might have for the postseason. But I think based on the unique circumstances surrounding this season, most teams are just still trying to figure it out, get a gauge of who they are, what their identity is, and identify what they need to work on come playoff time. So take Boston as an example. Celtics have not been very healthy throughout the year. They've not been whole. Brad Stevens is trying to assess his team, and with each player that comes back, they seem to lose another player. So in their case, being 500, I don't think they're looking at the playoffs and who the matchup might be. They just want to get in and hopefully start playing their best basketball when it matters most. Philadelphia, similar situation in trying to figure out what this team is going to look like when the smoke clears, once George Hill is in the mix. And I do think the 76ers have a feeling, and rightfully so, that they could go on a run. They could have a postseason spurt that leads them to an NBA championship series. That's the way they should feel, and they're going to use this final 20-plus games to figure out the things that they need to work on.
So much of those aspirations, of course, hinge on a player like, or not a player like, hinge on Joel Embiid. And it looks like he's going to be back tonight after a one-game absence following his first return. What level do you think Joel was playing at before he went down against Washington a few weeks back?
I'd say 3 letters describe it. M, V, I think you know the last letter, P. He was playing at an MVP level. There's no denying it. He was, in my mind, the MVP of the league prior to the injury. Now, whether or not missing those games will cost him the award, if he goes on a tear the rest of the way and the numbers are overwhelming and the 76ers are winning consistently, I think he'll get his name right back in the race. But that did allow Nikola Jokic to gain some traction. There's no doubt that he is now a name that's emerged as a legitimate possibility. But let's forget about the awards, forget about the trophies. When you have Joel Embiid on your team, you have a chance to beat anyone on any given night. Can you beat teams 4 out of 7 games? With the playoff format, that remains to be seen. Matchups are going to play a big role in that. I would sense from those that are closer to it than I am, everybody wants to see Embiid and Simmons on the biggest stage with everything at stake and how that combination will perform. We've seen so many years in the NBA where teams have had big stars and it hasn't quite translated into championships. And there's a shelf life for that. So ultimately, the team has to make decisions based on results and not just potential and what they think the team could be if everything broke correctly. That's where this group will be judged. And I certainly believe that Doc Rivers is the right guy to uncork it if this team is going to have a chance to play for the biggest stakes that we know of in the NBA.
I'd love to wrap it up asking you about Doc Rivers. What do you think his secret is? Why do you think he's had sustained success over the course of now going on 3 decades in the league?
He's very real and he's very authentic. He says what's on his mind, and sometimes that can rub people the wrong way, but more often than not, it needs to be said. And I think in this particular instance where the 76ers had success but couldn't quite get over the hump, it required a certain type of coach, someone that's been there, someone that's dealt with big personalities before, someone that's won at the highest level, so has the credibility to do it. And his whole approach is what this team needed. They needed someone to speak honestly and truthfully and maybe come at it from a different lens, someone that was outside the sphere that could really look at things in a way that they needed to be viewed. And for Doc, I think even for him, there was a sense of this was the right time for him to make a change and do something different with a different team and a different group. And I think they needed to hear a new voice. And that's saying nothing against the previous regime. They did an excellent job, but sometimes you just need to hear something a little different. And the message and the way it's presented has to be different. I think that's why this has worked so well. Defensively, the numbers are better. Offensively, I think this team is more well-rounded. As mentioned, I'm very curious to see once they have all the pieces, what it looks like, what the rotation looks like, and who closes games. Who do they rely on to close and end games when it's winning time for this franchise?
Through analysis and apparel, Iron Eagle elevating 7-6 Live Countdown tonight. Thanks so much.
Bri, if I could wear a T-shirt, I would. Trust me. I'm with you, though, bud.
Enjoy. See ya. I really felt ashamed by my getup alongside Ian in that suit. Felt like it was a bad look for me.
He was dressed to impress, Celts. I like the way you couched it. He elevated the fashion standard on the show.
Very true. Very true. But I think a lot of good insight from Ian there. And listen, I think that he's right. So much of sports, and especially in the NBA, seeing can superstar tandems or trios find how to get it done. And I just think it's always interesting gauging the pulse of national media members. I mean, you've spoken to a bunch of the ESPN and TNT people this season, Lauren, so far. And really, when you zoom out of the local area, it's pretty much that. Can Doc Rivers get this tandem of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid over the hump and to the highest of high stages?
And valuable to get that external perspective. I love hearing from people like Ian Eagle, like the ESPN folks that we've had on as well. It's really refreshing to sort of zoom out a little bit, get out of the weeds, and see what they see, because those guys are watching every game around the league, seeing what every team is up to. And I personally will expose myself for being pretty locked in on the Sixers these days. I don't get as much opportunity to really zoom out. And so it's really cool to hear from people like Ian Eagle.
What do we make of the Boston Celtics as we segue into tonight's matchup? Team that's made some personnel moves, a team that has not been able to keep the core of its rotation together consistently at all this season. What do we make of them?
Well, they're struggling more than we're used to, but they have very impressive pieces. Tonight, no Tristan Thompson. They'll be without their top rebounder. But I think, as is the case with any rivalry game, Celts, they're still going to bring a punch. It's still going to be a competitive one. So regardless of what struggles they've had, whether they've been to personnel or health and safety protocols, I think regardless of who's available, tonight figures to be a pretty good one.
You can see the disparity there between the Celtics record at home and on the road, a little bit of a seesaw, but you mentioned the player days lost. 133, I think, is the count now, with Tristan Thompson and Evan Fournier being out. 133 total player days lost, by far the most in the league. I think the next closest team is maybe 20 days behind the Celtics. So whether it's been due to injury or health and safety protocols, the Celtics just have not been able to keep their core together. That's their problem, not the 76ers. But I think it's important context when looking at what the Celtics have done or haven't done this season.
For sure. Their problems not necessarily indicative of the quality that they're capable of producing. They've just been handicapped in other ways this season.
Okay, it is time. I'm going to check my Tissot Chrono XL. Let's raise it up. NBA Special Edition watch. Lauren, what are you rocking?
I'm rocking the Tissot PR100 Celts. And if I may, it looks like it's time for Keys to the Game presented by Tissot.
It's amazing how that happens. We check our time, we check our watches, and Tissot always on top of accurate timing. And that's when it's time for Keys to the Game. Go first.
It is indeed. Should I go first? Okay. Celts, my key was lock it down. We heard from Jason Crafton a little bit earlier about how much the Celtics struggle when you can lock down the perimeter. So look for Ben Simmons, Matisse Thybulle, Danny Green to pick up a lot of those responsibilities. We talked about Tristan Thompson being out, which Joel Embiid not on the Sixers injury report as of current. So an advantage down low. If you can lock down the perimeter, you should have a pretty good situation on all areas of the court.
Love it. Listen, every time we do one of these shows previewing the Celtics, I always forget to mention one guy. I always talk about Jason Tatum. I talk about Jaylen Brown. I focus on Kemba Walker and whomever else. I feel like I never zero in on Marcus Smart. He is not to be overlooked. He scored a combined 45 points against the 76ers the first two games of the season. He is tenacious. He is ferocious on defense. You know what? Celtics might be missing players, but if they have Smart out there, he is such a huge part of their heartbeat and their identity. Can't overlook that guy. He's the type of player, Lauren, where if he's on any team other than yours, it is impossible to root for him. But if he were on your team, it would be impossible not to.
I feel like every time these two teams face each other, when Marcus Smart is available, you and I have that exact conversation.
True. Yes. I always feel like I never do it when I'm on air. You know, I feel like he's always an afterthought. So I wanted to make him my first thought tonight. Marcus Smart.
There you
A
go.
weapon. Key weapon.
I'm sure he appreciates it, Celts.
Yeah, I'm sure he's in the locker room at TD Garden right now, just scrolling through.
Locked in.
Those are our Tissot keys to the game presented by Tissot. Swiss, affordable, luxury, stylish. It's great. Feels great. Looks great. You know, we appreciate them. We certainly do.
We do. We do indeed. Thank you, Tissot.
Before we get out of here, a new content update for you. We have a new episode ready for you for Coat Check. It is the season recap debrief with our guy Matt Murphy and Dee Lynham and Jason Crafton, who we heard from in our new Inside the Game segment. So check that out. That dropped a little while ago on the 76ers Podcast Network. Tom's Talks with Tom McGinnis is going to be out Thursday. Then Lauren and I are back with a new pod, the Friday Deep Dive with Devon Givens on Friday. Because after tonight, there's no games until Friday, right? Yeah.
A rare 2 days off. They almost never happen, so we'll be sure to enjoy it.
All right. Big thanks to Jason Crafton and Ian Eagle for joining us on tonight's show. Ryan Coletti and Trevor Gaffney for producing. Thank you, Lauren Rosen. Thank you, viewers. Enjoy tonight's game. Sixers try to go for the season sweep against the Celtics. Enjoy.